Hello, I'm Dilek Tuna. You're watching A News. Here are the headlines for the hour. The US launches overnight strikes on 3 Iranian nuclear facilities, with Trump calling them a spectacular military success. The IAEA says there is no increase in off-site radiation after the US strikes as the agency prepares for a special meeting. The world reacts to US strikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. The United States has conducted large-scale precision airstrikes on 3 major Iranian nuclear facilities. US President Donald Trump addressed the nation following the operation, calling it a spectacular military success. A top US general confirmed that the operation achieved its objectives, noting that Iran's nuclear facilities were severely damaged.
The US military launched strikes on Iran's nuclear sites in Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan. After days of deliberation and before his self-imposed 2-week deadline, President Trump announced the decision to join Israel's military campaign against Iran. According to President Donald Trump, the objective was to dismantle Iran's nuclear enrichment capacity and to neutralize what he called a growing regional threat.
Tonight I can report to the world that the strikes were a spectacular military success. Iran's key nuclear enrichment facilities have been completely and totally obliterated.
President Trump said the decision followed days of deliberation. He highlighted coordination with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, saying the two had worked closely as a team throughout the operation. Continuing his address, President Trump issued a warning to Iran, calling for peace, and stating that further military actions would be far greater if Iran did not comply.
With all of that being said, this cannot continue. There will be either peace or there will be tragedy for Iran far greater than we have witnessed over the last 8 days. Remember, there are many targets left. Tonight's was the most difficult of them all, by far, and perhaps the most lethal. But if peace does not come quickly, we will go after those other targets with precision, speed, and skill. Most of them can be taken out in a matter of minutes. There's no military in the world that could have done what we did tonight, not even close. There has never been a military that could do what took place just a little while ago.
The US president praised the American and Israeli military forces involved, singling out General Dan Kane and Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth. He also announced that a Pentagon briefing will be held at 8 a.m. the following day.
President Donald Trump has declared the US strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities a major success, while also delivering stark warnings to Tehran against any retaliation. Nick Harper reports from Washington, D.C.
US President Donald Trump, speaking from the White House, said that this had been a spectacular military success. The US targeting 3 Iranian facilities which are known to be used to enrich uranium. Donald Trump said that they had been completely and fully obliterated. But he also warned Iran not now to retaliate, saying that future attacks from the United States would be far greater and a lot easier. And he said that Iran basically now has the ball in its court as to what takes place in the Middle East region, warning them this cannot continue, saying there will be either peace or tragedy for Iran, also pointing out that the US had many targets left that it could potentially decide to strike. So the US president, despite on Thursday saying that he would decide within the next 2 weeks whether to join Israel and strike Iran, has decided to take the decision just 48 hours after that pronouncement and going ahead with this late Saturday evening US time strike against Iran. He is painting it as a success. Tehran is vowing to retaliate. The US president is warning them not to do so unless it wants to receive more US weaponry targeting places throughout Iran. Nick Harper for A News in Washington.
Iran has condemned US strikes on its nuclear sites and vowed retaliation. Tehran also plans legal action against the IAEA. Turaj Shiraliliu reports from Tehran.
Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi has strongly condemned U.S. attack on Iran's nuclear sites in Isfahan, Natanz, and Fordow in central Iran on Sunday. In a statement released by the Foreign Ministry, the minister said that the United States, as a permanent member of the United Nations Security Council, has committed a grave violation of the UN Charter. Foreign Minister Araghchi said that the events this day, today, will have everlasting consequences in the region as Iran has vowed to retaliate against any attack on its nuclear sites. He also said that in accordance with the UN Charter, Iran will retaliate and respond to the US attacks, taking and reserving its right of retaliation. Earlier today, Iran's Atomic Energy Organization, in a statement, said that Iran will sue the IAEA, International Energy Atomic Agency, for its lack of action in condemning Israeli attacks and the US attacks on Iran's nuclear sites, which are under monitoring of the United Nations. It is expected that today's attacks will have spiraling effects and increase of tension in the region, as Iran has already threatened that it will retaliate by attacking US bases and its interests within reach. Turaj Shiralilu, reporting for News TV, Tehran.
The International Atomic Energy Agency says that there's been no increase in off-site radiation levels following the US bombing of 3 nuclear sites in Iran. The agency had previously called on all parties to exercise maximum restraint and warned that military escalation increases the chance of a radiological release with serious consequences for people and the environment. The Director General of the IAEA, Rafael Grossi, has said that he will be convening for an emergency meeting with its Board of Governors on Monday. Grossi has been the target of much Iranian criticism in recent days for what the Islamic Republic described as conflicting statements that incited Israel's initial attack. At the centre of everything is Iran's nuclear program. Here's what is currently known about it.
Iran's nuclear program is spread over many locations. Country has 7 to 8 major nuclear facilities: Natanz, Fordow, Isfahan, Arak, Bushehr, Tehran reactor, Parchin, Arak heavy water. Natanz, Iran's primary uranium enrichment hub, about 220 kilometers southeast of Tehran in Isfahan province. It's deeply underground with both pilot and full-scale centrifuge halls. Fordow, underground enrichment facility inside a mountain near Qom, around 100 kilometers southwest of Tehran, using advanced IR-6 centrifuges. Bushehr, the country's only commercial nuclear power plant, located on the Persian Gulf coast. Arak, heavy water reactor complex southwest of Tehran, originally designed alongside the IR-40 reactor. Isfahan Center, central hub for uranium conversion, fuel production and research labs. Tehran Research Reactor, operates near Tehran, producing isotopes and used mainly for research.
Now joining us to discuss further is Maria Zulkina. She's Head of Regional Security and Conflict Studies, DIF, from Warsaw, Poland. Welcome to the program, Maria.
Hello, nice to see you. Hello.
Thank you. Now, in his address after the strikes, Donald Trump said, in his words, completely and totally obliterated, referring to Iran's nuclear facilities. Could Iran rebuild faster than anticipated, and does their 60% enriched uranium stockpile remain intact?
We don't have until now any evidence that U.S. and Israel together have really reached the regional goal, at least the official goal, which was declared both by Tel Aviv and Washington, about really hurting the capacities, the nuclear capacities of Iran, and only in the time being when some leaks or intelligence data will be in place, so we will have more information about whether there was real damage actually. Because as of now, it seems that we don't have enough information on that side. However, it's interesting that the goals declared on the one hand by Israeli side and by American side differs, while US is still insisting that they have narrow, so to say, modest goals in just hitting the nuclear capacities of Iran, whatever does it mean, because there is no scope, understandable, what does mean hitting or damaging the capacities. In fact, Israeli forces, or Israeli side actually, is looking for larger scope goals, let's say, with domestic probably destabilization or even the regime change in Iran.
Okay. And Maria, does this strike end hopes of reviving an Iran nuclear deal?
I wouldn't exclude basically that at some point Donald Trump would be ready to start negotiations again about, let's say, the second generation of nuclear deal with Iran. And probably it will be sufficient from Donald Trump's point of view to push Iran for negotiations by these airstrikes. However, it doesn't mean that Iran will be ready and will be even interested in going back to negotiations table to the previously existing nuclear deal, or which Donald Trump actually seized during his first presidential term, or that Iran will be ready to talk about the second generation deal, let's say. However, from Donald Trump diplomacy point of view, I wouldn't exclude that this is kind of possible option for America, for US, to cease their airstrikes on Iran at some point if there are signals that Iran is ready to negotiate. However, it doesn't mean that this will really rebirth the idea of negotiations and will bring the new deal to the table.
Okay, Maria, thank you so much for joining us on the program. Now, world leaders have reacted to the US strike on Iran's nuclear facilities as they warn of a threat to global peace.
Leaders from around the world have reacted to the United States' involvement in the conflict between Israel and Iran. This comes as US President Donald Trump confirmed a major military strike on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi called the strike outrageous and noted that there will be everlasting consequences. Araghchi also called on the United Nations to be alarmed by the actions of the United States. UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres expressed concern over the US strike and called it a dangerous escalation in a region already on the edge. Guterres said the actions are a direct threat to international peace and called on member states to de-escalate the situation. UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer supported the strike and said Iran can never be allowed to develop a nuclear weapon, calling it a threat to international security. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen said that Iran must never acquire a bomb and emphasized that stability in the Middle East is a priority with tensions at a new peak. Antonio Costa, the European Council President, said that he was deeply alarmed by the news from the Middle East and called on all parties to show respect for international law. Russia's foreign ministry has condemned the attack, calling it an irresponsible decision to subject the territory of a sovereign state to missile and bomb attacks. Meanwhile, Pope Leo has appealed to the international community to stop the war in the Middle East, warning that it could lead to an irreparable abyss.
Dear brothers and sisters, alarming news flows from the Middle East, especially Iran. In this dramatic scenario, which includes Israel and Palestine, the daily suffering of the population risks being forgotten, especially in Gaza and other territories where the urgency for adequate humanitarian support is becoming more and more pressing.
The US strikes on Iran come only days after Trump had issued a 2-week deadline to decide on US intervention in the conflict, with the US president stating that he wanted to give chance for negotiations.
Reactions across the United States are pouring in following US President Donald Trump's confirmation of strikes on Iranian nuclear facilities.
Following US President Donald Trump's announcement of a strike on 3 of Iran's nuclear facilities, multiple media outlets and US citizens have reacted. The Associated Press reported on the incident and called the move by the US military a risky gambit to weaken a longtime foe. CNN reports that Trump's actions risk escalating the 2-week conflict between Israel and Iran even further, and underscored Iran's warning of retaliation if the United States got involved. The New York Times also reported on the strike and claimed that thousands of American troops could be in Iran's direct line of fire, with many only having minutes to take cover should Iran retaliate. US residents also voiced their opinions following Trump's intervention, with some having mixed reactions over the decision.
President Trump's doing what he has to do at the end of the day. He's going in there, putting his foot down and making sure they're not going to threaten us again like that. Because at the end of the day, you live here. You have your future kids living here. Like, I want my future kids to be living in a nation where they're going to be safe.
Yeah, so I think it's somewhat of a scary situation, certainly, to get directly involved in this. I can't say I know too much on the matter, but just as a citizen, I'm concerned. Yeah.
Meanwhile, politicians have also reacted to Trump's move to strike Iran's nuclear sites. Republican Senators Lindsey Graham and Ted Cruz both supported the US president's move and expressed appreciation for Trump and the United States Air Force. Democratic Congresswoman Alexandra Ocasio-Cortez criticized the strike, calling it disastrous decision made without authorization. Experts have warned that US intervention in the war has made the United States a legitimate target of Iranian retaliation, saying the move puts US bases and assets in the region at risk.
Iran has fired dozens of missiles at Israeli cities, including Tel Aviv and Haifa, in what appears to be the first wave of retaliation following US airstrikes on Iran's nuclear facilities. At least 86 people were injured and a state of emergency has been declared. Trent Murray reports from Tel Aviv.
It was just after 7 a.m. local time that we saw what appears to be the first round of retaliation from Iran after those US airstrikes. Around 20 to 30 missiles fired in 2 separate waves, both here at Tel Aviv, but also in Haifa, the 3rd largest city in the north. Now, we are being told that the air defense systems were able to intercept most of them, but there were at least 10 impacts on the ground. 86 people reportedly injured. We are seeing scenes of significant destruction. Once again, homes and apartment buildings are bearing the brunt of much of the damage. This, of course, comes as Israel woke up to the news that President Trump has now involved the United States with those heavy bunker-busting bombs used on several of Iran's nuclear. We, of course, are tracking several groups in this region saying that they will now align with Iran and work to retaliate. Hamas and the Houthis have both put out statements saying that they are standing in solidarity with Iran and that they will be working to potentially defend them. From Israel's perspective, the state of emergency now has once again been increased to its highest level. Public gatherings have been banned. We know workplaces and schools have once again been shut. The airspace has also been closed. There were some repatriation flights in recent days. They have now been cancelled because of the situation. And we are being told even that a cruise ship carrying around 1,800 passengers had to delay its arrival here in Israel, carrying Israelis back home. It was coming into the port of Ashdod when this missile barrage took place. They were held out at sea until they were given the all clear to come into port. Trent Murray for A News, Tel Aviv.
Joining us now is Dr Casey Bab. He's a Senior Fellow with the Macdonald-Laurier Institute from Ottawa, Canada. Welcome to the program, Casey.
Thanks for having me.
Now, given that vows, as in Trump's words, has gone, in your assessment, is Iran still an existential threat to Israel?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I think a lot of people on the ground, frankly, despite what U.S. officials are saying in Israel, my colleagues who I've spoken to there are saying, look, first of all, it remains to be seen what level of damage has been done on these nuclear facilities. Some of these are very far underground, and so it's going to take some time to really assess the true impact of these strikes. That said, if indeed they have been effectively eliminated and taken offline, yes, Iran still remains an existential threat. They fund the world's most barbaric terrorist organizations, and rather than building their country up, building their people up to their full potential, they've spent much of their human capital and resources on terrorism. So the regime is still focused squarely on Israel and the United States and waging war against them. So the nuclear issue is one thing, but the ideology behind their actions is another thing.
Okay, and if Iran retaliates, which it says it's intending to, targeting US military bases in the region, what will Washington's reaction be in that case?
Well, I think what Iran will probably do, akin to what they've done in the past, if they are going to respond and target US infrastructure, US assets, it's going to be calibrated enough that it likely does not warrant a devastating counterstrike from the United States, but it will enable them to legitimize the regime, to say to regime hardliners at home and abroad in countries like Canada and the United States and elsewhere, we're not to be messed with, and we struck the enemy back. So that's where we are right now, but the regime has to really find a way to walk that line between doing something that's going to lead to their complete destruction and also not looking weak to their supporters.
Okay, Dr. Casey, thank you so much for joining us on the program.
Anytime.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Azerbaijan issued a statement expressing concern over recent US attacks on Iran's nuclear facilities. In the statement, Azerbaijan calls on all parties to exercise restraint and prevent further escalation. It emphasises that dialogue and diplomacy should be prioritised to resolve the situation peacefully. The strikes on Iran's nuclear sites caused significant interest from regional countries. Our correspondent Zainab Farajzadeh reports from the border between Azerbaijan and Iran.
Behind me is the Iranian border, but across that line, tensions are escalating fast. Israel and Iran exchange threats and drone strikes. Overnight, United States warplanes and submarines joined Israeli forces in launching a wave of coordinated airstrikes on key nuclear facilities. Fordow, Natanz, and Isfahan were all hit, with the White House claiming Iran's nuclear infrastructure was destroyed. The fallout is already visible here. Hundreds of foreign nationals from China, India, Russia and beyond have been pouring across this border. Astara may seem distant from the battlefront, but with the conflict deepening, even distant cities alike that are feeling the consequences of tensions between Israel and Iran.
The Ministry of Foreign Affairs of the Republic of Kazakhstan has issued a statement expressing concern over the recent escalation in the Middle East. The statement emphasises the importance of diplomatic dialogue and calls for the prevention of further destabilisation. Kazakhstan's Ministry of Foreign Affairs has noted a sharp deterioration of the international security following recent military actions against Iran. Kazakhstan underscores the need to resolve all disagreements, including nuclear-related issues, through negotiations in line with the UN Charter. The ministry calls on all concerned parties to work toward an agreement aimed at preventing the proliferation of nuclear weapons and ensuring the security of states committed to non-proliferation. Iran's Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi announced an official visit to Moscow during a press conference in Istanbul. Araghchi is scheduled to meet with Russian President Vladimir Putin and hold discussions on key regional and international issues. He noted that Iran has regularly updated Russia on its indirect negotiations with the United States over the past few months. The two sides have also coordinated positions on major matters. Araghchi stressed Russia's role in previous nuclear deal and its influence as a permanent member of the UN Security Council. He added that Moscow, together with Beijing, is working to present a UN resolution aimed at countering hostile actions against Iran. Turkmenistan's Foreign Minister Rashid Meredov held a phone conversation with the US First Deputy Secretary of State Christopher Landau. The two discussed bilateral cooperation and the ongoing situation in the Middle East. During the call initiated by the United States, both sides highlighted the positive ties between Turkmenistan and the US, emphasizing their ongoing cooperation across political, economic, humanitarian and cultural fields. The discussion focused on regional challenges, humanitarian concerns, and the importance of diplomatic efforts to resolve conflicts peacefully. Turkmenistan reaffirmed its commitment to peaceful solutions and its neutral status recognized by the United Nations. The country also conveyed its willingness to actively contribute to the resolving situation in the Middle East through various diplomatic means and mechanisms. The Turkish Foreign Minister met with his Syrian counterpart in Istanbul today. The talks took place on the sidelines of the 51st session of the Organization of Islamic Cooperation's Council of Foreign Ministers. Turkish Foreign Minister Hakan Fidan welcomed Syrian Foreign Minister Asad al-Shaybani in Istanbul. They discussed regional developments and bilateral cooperation during the summit, which Turkey is hosting under the theme, the OIC in a Transforming World. This session is set to be one of the most widely attended in the organization's history. That's all we have for now from Baku. Stay tuned to A News for more updates.